So you're ready to start learning Spanish, but there is so much noise out there that you have no idea where to start. Or maybe you've already been trying with some apps, books, and videos, and although you've memorized some words, you still consider yourself a complete beginner when it comes to actually speaking. No te preocupes. In today's video, I'm going to show you 3 key things that you need to do as an absolute beginner in this particular order, okay? In order to start speaking Spanish quickly and to avoid some super common mistakes that will keep you in beginner zone forever. But before we get into it, if you're new to me, bienvenido or bienvenida. My name is Erica. I'm a former Spanish medical interpreter turned Spanish teacher and language coach, now living and loving life abroad here in Mexico. I've had the immense privilege of watching hundreds of Spanish students transform their Spanish and have the real conversations that they so desired, many of them starting from the very beginning. And having learned Spanish from scratch myself with no Spanish family, not growing up exposed to the language, I truly understand where you're coming from. If that is your situation, it is possible for you as well. And I'm so happy that you're here with me and ready to get started on the right foot. But I want to give you a free gift. I'm super excited about this. I've prepared a free interactive mini course for you, the absolute beginner, in which I'm going to teach you the most important pronunciation basics to get you started on the right foot. We're going to be working with a couple of Spanish dialogues as well to help us with that process. You're going to not only learn, but practice actively and out of order the Spanish alphabet so that you can easily spell words out loud when you need to do so. That's very useful. And you'll learn how to introduce yourselves, things like your name, your place of origin, your profession. I may not have this available forever, but for the time being, you can grab access to that mini course for free in the link that I'll leave in the description box for you. All right, guys, the 3 things that you need to focus on as a beginner so that you don't get lost in a sea of endless and useless activities. The first one, which is kind of 2 things, but I'm combining them into one because they really do work together. All right, you'll see how, is to focus on your listening and your pronunciation. Listening is the foundation of good pronunciation. You can't learn good pronunciation without listening and having someone to imitate. The beginning stages of your learning is the very best time to put the most focus on pronunciation. You can always learn more vocabulary, and you will forever. You can always refine your grammar, and you will. But major pronunciation issues that make it hard for others to understand you tend to get fossilized in speech, and those are harder to correct later. Not impossible by any means. I've had many students who have had incredible breakthroughs with their pronunciation, even though they've been speaking for a number of years. But if you're just starting or you're in this kind of beginner stage, there is no time like now to work on your pronunciation. And no, that 2-page pronunciation guide at the beginning of your textbook is not enough. You have got to also listen and mimic in order to develop these good pronunciation habits. So that is why working with a textbook only that does not have audio included is a bad idea, especially as a beginner. Always make sure that you have audio to work with. Now, don't get me wrong, reading is incredibly beneficial. I mean, this is the second way that we can input the language. We have to focus on inputting the language. We do that through listening and reading. But when you're starting out, make sure that you're always combining the reading with listening. Find passages for which you have both the audio and the text that is going to help your pronunciation so much. Listen, listen, listen. Now, when you do read along with your audio, it's going to be easier to understand because you are going to notice cognates. These are words that look the same or very similar in English and Spanish and mean the same thing. Often we have plenty of false cognates too, false friends, as they like to call them, but many do in fact mean the same thing, like doctor, hospital, universidad, animal. It's pretty easy to see what these things mean in English by just looking at them. But as you can hear, they don't really sound so much alike. In fact, your ear could even just miss it entirely if you're not reading along. And the problem is that if you do read these words without hearing them, you're going to have a strong tendency to pronounce them in English. Let's take doctora. Okay, this is a female doctor. If you just look at this and you've never heard it, you're probably going to say something like doctora, right? We're saying doctor basically and just kind of adding an at the end, right? Doctora. But there's a big difference between doctora and doctora, right? So always be listening and mimicking. Listen and mimic. Does that make sense? Does it make sense why starting with pronunciation and listening is so important? So you don't have to relearn a bunch of words that you thought you knew, but you really didn't. If that makes sense, drop me a comment below saying pronunciation. Now, what do you listen to? I suggest using short dialogues or short stories that contain words that are common and that you will need to use right away. In the free mini course that I'm giving you that you can find below this video, we start here with listening and pronunciation because it is foundational. So don't be surprised that we're going to start there before we even start building sentences. And that's kind of a spoiler because the second most important thing that you need to do as a complete beginner is to now start building out simple sentences with basic and useful vocabulary and simple grammatical structures. Again, these sentences need to be useful. They need to be things that you would actually say. Because I see y'all over there putting together those random sentences with your app, like the egg is in the cereal. What is your egg doing in your cereal? So when I say build sentences, I'm using the word build for a reason. Because this is different than filling in the blanks of a sentence or selecting from a multiple choice list the correct translation. I want you to actually think. I want you to take your English thoughts and transmit them into Spanish. This is active, not passive learning. Listen, when you're first starting out, it is impossible not to think first in your native language because you don't have enough words to just go to thinking straight in your target language. That is going to come. And when it's time, I have techniques to help you make that transition. But when you're starting out, you are naturally going to be translating, and that is not a bad thing. Translation can be used as a really helpful tool when you do it right. I talk about that more in this video. You may want to check that out next. So by building sentences, I mean this translation process, this getting your English thoughts into Spanish. When you are guided through this process, you'll quickly start to see that many sentences are not direct translations of English. Some sentences can be translated literally and they end up working out just fine, but a lot need to be expressed in a different way. The tendency to translate literally is what leads to beginner mistakes such as me llamo es, right? For my name is. But in Spanish, me llamo doesn't mean my name is. It literally means I call myself. So we don't need the es. It's just me llamo Erika. And that's it. And the funny thing is, some students are confused by these differences and ask questions like, why? Why is it like that? Why is the sentence structure this way? But I think we really need to ask ourselves, why not? Why would Spanish be a direct translation of English, as if English was the language that every other language has based their languages off of? It's not. So hopefully you'll get used to that quickly as you go through this sentence building structure, and you'll stop asking so much, why is it like this? And simply noticing, look, this is how it is. Let me build more sentences like that so that I can get used to this structure. So learning to build sentences through these patterns with guidance, of course, will help you start to speak quickly, and it will help the vocabulary more quickly pass from your passive memory into your active memory. Because you didn't just have to recognize it on your app and select the correct answer. You had to recall it, and not only recall that word, you have to recall how to put this sentence together, how to express this thought. As basic as a sentence as it may be, this exercise is so much more powerful than what you may be doing currently. You're having to recall it. You're having to build sentences based on what you learn, not just fill in the missing pieces of the sentence. It's more challenging, but it's effective. Are you willing to put in the work? Give me a like on this video if you're ready to work so that you can start speaking Spanish quickly, even as a complete beginner. Now, on the flip side of this translation discussion, many times, and even oftentimes, especially in these beginning stages, you'll find yourself translating something literally from English to Spanish because you haven't yet learned the proper Spanish structure, or maybe you forgot it. And that's okay. It's actually wonderful because the more vocabulary that you learn, the more sentences you'll be able to try to put together, even if they're not completely correct. And a lot of times, probably, you can be understood to the point when someone could understand what you meant and correct you and give you the right way to say it. And that is such a win. And you're going to hang on to that correction so much more than if you had just said your sentence in English and they gave you the translation in Spanish. And no, you actually working to try yourself is so much better. And this comes with more vocabulary and more work trying to put sentences together yourself. For example, imagine you want to say I'm cold, which I literally am right now. Imagine you want to say I'm cold in Spanish. And so you don't know how to say that. You forgot how to say that. And you say soy frío. And someone understands through the context and you're doing this and they say, oh, tienes frío. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. You use tener with frío. I have cold. Tengo frío, right? So that's okay. Mistakes are part of your learning process. They're an essential part of your learning process. But if you're not making mistakes, that means that you're not trying to put sentences together. And we have a problem because this attempt to put your sentences together is such an important thing that you need to be focused on. So you need that feedback. Feedback? How do we get that feedback? Who do we get that feedback from? You see, so far what I've been describing is assuming that you're learning on your own. You're listening, you're imitating, you're working on your pronunciation. You're starting to put sentences together with the help of a really good beginner's course, perhaps. But what about real-time feedback? This brings us to number 3. The third most important thing that you need to do as a beginner is to practice speaking with real people. Practice with what you've learned so far. You see, most learners just learn. They don't practice speaking in conversation enough, which is different than just speaking by repeating something or following a prompt. Amazing things start to occur when you start using your Spanish with real people. You get feedback for improvement from a teacher or from anyone who knows something that you don't. You learn to take what you've learned in a structured way and use it on your feet, out of order. Because it's one thing to think, okay, ser conjugations. Okay, soy profesora. Ella es doctora. Él es arquitecto. Yeah, I got that. I got that. Yo soy, tú eres, él es. I got that. I know that. I can go through the list. And then you find yourself in a class and the teacher asks you to introduce yourself. And then your classmate introduces herself. And then you're asked to state what she is. Oh, what does she do for a living? What did she just say? And all of a sudden there's a little bit of pressure. Oh, okay. Ella es de California, right? And so you're having to use it in real time. And that just does something amazing for the brain and for your confidence, because this is real life. In real life, our conversations are not going to follow the conjugation list order. We're just going to have to say whichever one conjugation we need for this one thing that we need to say. So the more dynamic you can make your speaking practice, the more real you can make your speaking practice, the faster you're going to learn. New vocabulary and new sentence structures will stick so much better the more you use them. Another huge advantage of speaking with people and not robots is that you start to eliminate your fear of speaking before it even starts. If you are a beginner and you are following what I said, these 3 steps, and you're here on step 3, and you're starting to use the little bit that you've learned, you are putting yourself in such an amazing position. Because if you wait months and years and you're just learning and not speaking, how are you going to feel the first time you go to speak to someone? After working with hundreds of learners, I found that this is just simply not a good idea. They're very fearful. And yes, part of this has to do with the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And so you start getting more self-conscious because you're no longer a beginner. Maybe I'm supposed to know this. But what I have seen is that the earlier you start to use your Spanish, the more speaking starts to feel it's a normal thing you do. When you start speaking from the beginning, it starts to feel normal from the beginning. Speaking feels normal. Making mistakes feels normal. Getting corrections feels normal. Because it is. If you wait a long time, you may be more self-conscious, more fearful, feeling like you should know this because you've been studying for years and everyone else is judging you. And it's just harder to start. So just start now. Speaking from the beginning is also super motivational. I cannot emphasize this point enough. This is something that I have discovered over the past few years after working with so many students. They have taken me on this path of discovery. It's true that there is so much that you can learn on your own, and I will always preach to you the need to become an independent language learner because you will progress so much faster than if you expect someone else to just spoon feed you all of the language. That's just impossible. But there was something so incredibly motivational about knowing that this evening or tomorrow, the next day, you can connect with like-minded people and practice what you're learning together with an opportunity to also receive real-time corrections from a professional. You'll make friends. You'll be so much happier with your learning and your progress. And as one of our students said, who's part of our group program, our Caminos Conversation Club, I like these classes because they keep me motivated as I have to do my homework in order to participate and understand what's going on in the classes. I'm getting familiarized with so much new vocabulary, which is one of the reasons why my listening is improving. Also, we get so much help from the teachers when we attend. I hate to miss, no matter how tired I am. Imagine looking forward to your learning day after day rather than coming to resent it. It's a beautiful thing when you can accomplish that. It will keep you consistent and motivated and keep you progressing. So in summary, the 3 most essential things you must do in this order as a beginner learning Spanish. Focus on listening and pronunciation. Even before you can understand most things, listening and mimicking will improve your pronunciation, set you up with a proper foundation, and it has added benefits like helping you notice common patterns and make learning vocabulary easier later on. Learn to build simple sentences actively instead of passively memorizing words or filling in blanks. Practice translating your own thoughts into Spanish using basic sentence structure with guidance, of course. This will help you start expressing yourself so much faster. And 3, practice speaking with real people. The sooner you start using Spanish in conversation, the more natural it will feel. Mistakes and corrections are part of the process. And the more you interact, the faster you'll improve. And then, of course, that process just continuously loops. Continue consuming, continue outputting. And you can't go wrong. If you follow those 3 steps, you'll avoid overwhelm, you'll stop wasting time on ineffective methods, and start speaking Spanish much faster than most beginners. The mini course that I'm currently giving you for free is the perfect way to get started. In fact, it's an entire module, the first module of my 12-module course for beginners called Spanish Starter. And if you like what you see, you may consider joining us in Spanish Starter, which is a 12-week hybrid program, including 12 weeks of self-study material that correspond with 12 weeks of live online group classes. On what days, at what times, every day, you get to choose. You can come to class every day if you want. We'll be considering the same topic throughout that week, and then the next topic on week 2, the next topic on week 3. And literally when I say every day, I mean Monday through Sunday, even weekends, at different times all throughout the week so that you can figure out the mornings work best for you, the evenings, maybe a morning class on Monday, but an evening class on Thursday. You can come and reinforce the same material that you've been learning that week throughout the entire week. Or if you can just attend 1 live class per week, that's perfectly fine as well. I'm trying to make this as easy for you as possible. No more excuses. We're kicking off a brand new round of Spanish Starter on Monday, March 31st, 2025. So if you're watching this in real time or maybe a couple days after I've recorded it, then you still have a few days to join us. Get prepped with that first week of material, which is actually what I'm also giving you for free if you want to just try it out first. And then go ahead and hop on for the live classes starting March 31st. And of course, if you join us in the full Spanish Starter program, you will get instant access to the entire 12-week curriculum, and you'll be able to join us for the 12 weeks of live classes. But remember, you can start with your free taster of the self-study materials, which is that free mini course that I have discussed, Module 1 of Spanish Starter. I have that here in the description box for you. And I've also linked more information about the Spanish Starter program here in the description. I hope to help guide you along with my incredible team to blast past your beginner stages and start speaking Spanish in real conversations in your daily life. Grab your free sample. And after that, if you're looking for more Spanish lessons for beginners, check out this video next.